Hello and welcome to Vantage. I'm Alyson Le Grange. Let's get started. There's finally a breakthrough in Gaza. After months of war and 3 days of talks, a ceasefire deal is taking shape. Israel and Hamas have agreed to the first stage of a plan. It includes the release of hostages by Hamas and a pullout of Israeli troops from deep inside Gaza. We saw this moment unfold live as President Trump got the news mid-meeting. Within minutes, he posted online confirming the deal. Families of hostages burst into tears. Celebrations erupted across Israel and Gaza, and world leaders from Paris to Jakarta have welcomed the deal. India's Prime Minister called it a step toward peace, but this is just the beginning. The real question now, will it last? And what comes next? Tonight on Vantage, we'll break this down for you. In other news, the IMF has warned uncertainty is the new normal in the global economy. We'll tell you what this means. It's the second day of British Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to India. We'll bring you the highlights. Why China is tightening its grip on rare earth exports. How the US government shutdown is now impacting flights. And why the leader of the Pacific island of Palau gave an underwater interview. First, as always, the headlines.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks with US President Donald Trump. The Indian Prime Minister congratulated Trump on the success of his Gaza peace plan. The two leaders also spoke about the progress made in the trade negotiations between New Delhi and Washington. During the call, Prime Minister Modi and President Trump agreed to stay in close touch over the coming weeks. Afghanistan's foreign minister arrives in India for a week-long visit. This is the first visit by a top Taliban leader to India since the group came back to power in Afghanistan in 2021. The Afghan minister is likely to meet External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval during his trip. Officially, India doesn't recognize the Taliban's rule in Afghanistan. The price of silver reaches more than $50 an ounce. This is its highest level since 1993. It comes in the wake of gold soaring to record highs. This year, gold, which is seen as a safe haven asset, has jumped around 50% in value amid geopolitical unrest. Russian President Vladimir Putin admits for the first time that his country played a role in the 2024 crash of an Azerbaijani passenger plane. In a meeting with the Azerbaijani president, Putin said Russia had deployed missiles to destroy Ukrainian drones on the morning of the incident, which exploded just meters away from the aircraft. At least 38 people were killed in the crash. Eritrea dismisses an accusation by Ethiopia that it is preparing to launch a war as provocative saber-rattling amid mounting tensions between the Horn of Africa neighbors. Relations between the two countries have been strained for several months. More than 30 years ago, Eritrea gained independence from Ethiopia. And Laszlo Krasznahorkai wins the Nobel Prize in Literature. His works explore themes of postmodern dystopia and melancholy. He is regarded by many as Hungary's most important living author. His first novel was published in 1985, and it remains his best-known work.
There's finally a glimmer of hope in Gaza. After 3 days of talks, Israel and Hamas have made a breakthrough. They have agreed on the first stage of a ceasefire. What's more, we saw it play out live. Donald Trump was in the middle of a meeting when the news came in. He got a note from his top diplomat, the Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Afterward, the president said that a breakthrough was close.
Well, they're smart, but they're not smart enough. Oh, my microphone's broken. They're smart, but they're not smart enough. They have been covered by these liberal cities for so many years. And that's why we're all working with Treasury, with all these different departments, to find the criminal conspiracy.
Okay. I'm just given. Yeah, I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly. So I will take a couple of more questions.
Within minutes, Trump posted on social media. He announced that Hamas and Israel had reached an agreement. Both sides signed off on stage 1 of the plan. And what is stage 1? Now, according to Trump, Hamas will release all hostages in their custody. After that, Israel will withdraw from deep inside Gaza. Now, let me pull up the map for you. The blue line marks Israel's current occupation. In stage 1, they will pull back to the yellow line. Still, the IDF will retain around 55% of Gaza's land. Now, Hamas says that the first stage will also include the entry of aid into the strip, plus the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. As the news came in, celebrations broke out. Families of hostages had been protesting on the streets of Israel. They broke out into cries of joy.
Truly, the joy is deep, but we have to be realistic. We have to be realistic until they get into the Red Cross vehicle and truly meet the IDF soldiers. Until that moment, we must pray, cry out to the gates of heaven.
I want to thank President Trump for bringing this amazing victory. That's the name for it. That's a victory. He deserves a Nobel Prize for this, a Nobel Peace Prize for bringing this amazing deal.
They're coming back. Matan is coming back. I can't breathe. I can't explain what I'm feeling. It's crazy. What do I say to him? What do I do? Hug and kiss him. Just tell him that I love him. That's it. And to see his eyes sink into mine.
Now, it's been a nightmare for these families, a nightmare that could end soon. Reports say the hostages could be released as soon as Saturday. As you heard, the families are thanking Donald Trump. His Commerce Secretary was with some of those families last night, and the president phoned in to speak to them.
We know you've done so much for us over the past, since you became a president, and even before that. And we trust you'll fulfill the mission until every hostage, every 48 of the hostages are home. Thank you so much. Blessed be the peacemakers.
God bless you, Mr. President. God bless America.
Thank you very much. You just take care of yourselves. The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
All.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And what's the sentiment in Gaza? Celebrations broke out in towns like Khan Yunis. At the same time, people are wary. After 2 years of relentless bombing, they are tired and scared.
Thank God, after this agreement today, we ask from God for it to be completed in goodness, hopefully, and this nightmare comes to an end, so we can announce that Gaza is staying and Gaza won't die.
I am happy and unhappy. We have lost a lot of people and lost loved ones, friends, and family. We lost our homes. The house is not only bricks that were destroyed, it is home and a refuge.
Now, the global reactions are also positive. Almost every country has welcomed the breakthrough. France, Italy, Britain, the entire Arab world, Turkey, Indonesia, India. All of these countries have welcomed the deal. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi posted a message on social media, and let me quote what he said. "We hope the release of hostages and enhanced humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza will bring respite to them and pave the way for lasting peace," unquote. Now, other world leaders were also full of praise.
We are very pleased with the agreement, to which we have actively contributed from the outset. From now on, the urgent delivery of comprehensive humanitarian aid to Gaza, the exchange of hostages and prisoners, the immediate cessation of Israel's attacks, and ensuring the withdrawal to designated lines are of paramount importance.
This is a moment of profound relief that we felt around the world, but particularly for the hostages, their families, and for the civilian population of Gaza, who have all endured unimaginable suffering over the last 2 years.
Developments in Israel give us cause for optimism. There is clearly a great opportunity to reach an agreement with Hamas in the coming hours already.
China hopes that a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire can be achieved in the Gaza Strip at an early date to effectively ease the humanitarian crisis and tensions in the region.
So how was this breakthrough achieved? In one word, it was thanks to pressure. Under Joe Biden's presidency, Israel had very few red lines. The operations kept expanding every month. At last count, more than 67,000 Palestinians have been killed, most of them civilians. Plus, aid was cut off in early 2025. Israel imposed a virtual blockade on the Strip, thus cutting off Gazans from food and medicines. For most of this year, Trump continued to back Israel. He even encouraged Netanyahu to leave the January ceasefire. Then what changed? It was mainly two things. One, Trump's MAGA base began to sour on Israel. Many leading ideologues had criticized the large-scale destruction. Secondly, Israel launched a daring attack on Qatar. Now, Qatar is a key ally of the US. It is home to the biggest US military base in the region. Plus, the attack galvanized the Arab world. They feared that Israel was going out of control, and Trump seized on that. He hosted Netanyahu at the White House last week. While there, he forced the Israeli Prime Minister to apologize to Qatar. What's more, he got Netanyahu to agree to his deal, his 20-point proposal for peace. At that point, maybe Netanyahu was hoping Hamas would reject it. After all, the deal would leave them defanged, with no weapons, no hostages, and no future role in governance. And that's where pressure came from the other side. Hamas's allies in Turkey and Qatar urged them to take the deal. Even Iran said it supported the peace process. So the writing was on the wall. If Hamas said no, all the blame would fall on them, which is probably why they have agreed to this deal. The question is, will it stick? And if it does, what will be the next steps? After every ceasefire comes the obvious question, will it stick? First, let's look at the ground situation. This morning, a fireball erupted in Gaza, followed by plumes of smoke. It happened less than an hour after the truce started. Now, it's not clear what triggered it. As things stand, Israel is not being blamed. And that sums up the expectations from the ceasefire. Everyone is hoping it sticks, but only time will tell the truth. For now, let's focus on the next stages. Trump's peace plan details 20 different points. After yesterday's breakthrough, point number 5 is of utmost importance. Let me quote it for you. Once all the hostages are released, Israel will release 250 life sentence prisoners, plus 1,700 Gazans who were detained after the 7th of October 2023. For every Israeli hostage whose remains are released, Israel will release the remains of 15 deceased Gazans. So that's the next step. Hamas will free all of the hostages. After that, Israel will free hundreds of Gazan prisoners. Once this is completed, Israel will withdraw partially. We showed you the map already. They will move from this blue line to the yellow line. Then comes the tricky part. Trump's plan requires Hamas to surrender and to give up their weapons. They must also transfer power to a new body, a body of Palestinian experts. Hamas has agreed to the second demand, but not to the first one. They are keen to retain their weapons. Once Hamas cedes power, Trump's plan gathers pace. Politically, Gaza will be controlled by the new body of experts. Militarily, it will be controlled by a new peacekeeping force. It's called the ISF, or the International Stabilization Force. Arab countries are expected to form the bulk of this. Once the ISF establishes control over Gaza, Israel will begin to withdraw. Again, let me pull up the map. The IDF will move from the yellow line to the red line, and later from the red line to a buffer zone. Now, this raises two questions. 1, how long will all of this take? And 2, will Israel retain a piece of Gaza? The answer to the first question is missing from the plan. It does not give a timeline for Israeli withdrawal. Here's what it says. The IDF will withdraw based on standards, milestones, and timeframes linked to demilitarization that will be agreed upon between the IDF, ISF, the guarantors, and the United States. Now that's pretty vague. It says Israeli forces will remain until Gaza does not pose a threat. Will that be weeks, months, or years? Secondly, will Israel retain a piece of Gaza? Now, Trump's plan explicitly says Israel will not annex or occupy Gaza. Yet the buffer zone is problematic. It accounts for almost 15% of Gaza. And once again, there is no timeline for withdrawal. The deal says the zone will remain with Israel until Gaza is secure. But frankly, all of this is secondary, because these steps are incumbent on Hamas disarming, on Hamas agreeing to cede power. And there is no guarantee that the group will do that. Just think about it. Hamas's biggest bargaining chip are the hostages, but all the hostages will be freed in the first stage itself, meaning that Hamas will have no leverage in the following stages. If they disarm, they will be even more vulnerable. So the question is, will they do it? Trump's plan does try to address this issue. Let me quote again. Once all hostages are returned, Hamas members who commit to peaceful coexistence and to decommission their weapons will be given amnesty. Members of Hamas who wish to leave Gaza will be provided safe passage to receiving countries. So Trump is promising to protect them, but only if they surrender and give up their weapons. So basically, it's a question of trust. Does Hamas trust the US president enough to agree to his terms? We saw flickers of that fear in their statement yesterday. Hamas asked Trump and the Arab countries to keep Israel in check, to ensure they implement the deal completely. It tells you how complicated this process will be. Yes, the first stage has been agreed to, but things will only get tougher from here. Like any deal, this requires trust. But after the horrors of October 7th and the war that followed, trust has almost disappeared. Now let's talk about the global economy. The International Monetary Fund has issued a new warning. Its chief says uncertainty is the new normal. That message comes ahead of next week's global economic meetings. The IMF says the world is not in crisis yet, but underlying risks are growing. From record gold prices to overvalued tech stocks, from high public debt to rising global protests, it's a wake-up call. The IMF has issued clear advice. It wants the US to fix its debt, China to boost spending, and Europe to unify its markets. The message is simple. Don't wait for a meltdown. Act now, before the system breaks, because uncertainty is here to stay.
The world economy is under pressure, and the warning comes from the top. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, has issued a clear alert. Its chief, Kristalina Georgieva, says, "Buckle up. Uncertainty is the new normal." She made that statement ahead of the IMF's annual meetings in Washington. Finance ministers and central bank heads will gather next week. Georgieva says the global economy has stayed resilient so far, even with President Trump's tariffs and global tensions. The U.S. has avoided a recession, and global growth is expected to slow only slightly this year. But Georgieva says the real test is still ahead. There are clear signs of strain. Gold prices have hit $4,000 for an ounce. That's a record. And it shows that investors are nervous. U.S. stocks are also at extreme highs, driven by hype around artificial intelligence. But the IMF warns this may not last. So what are the deeper problems? The IMF points to long-term weaknesses in the system. Georgieva says the full impact of trade tariffs is still unfolding. Many firms shipped products early to avoid duties, so the real slowdown might be delayed, not avoided. She also warns that financial markets may look stable, but they are hiding deeper risks.
So when you ask me where I'm most concerned, frankly, I'm very concerned about high debt levels in some advanced economies.
One sharp correction, she says, could drag down global growth. It would hit developing countries the hardest. She compared it to the dot-com bubble from 25 years ago. Today's tech stock prices are reaching the same extreme levels. The IMF also notes that global inequality is fueling unrest. Protests are rising in cities from Lima to Paris. People want better jobs, lower costs, and real opportunity, and they're not waiting quietly. So what's the solution? The IMF has laid out clear steps. First, it's calling on the United States. It wants the U.S. to fix its growing public debt. Trump's tax cuts, especially for high earners, are adding over $3 trillion to the debt. The president says tariffs are helping the economy, but the IMF wants long-term fixes. Next, it wants China to reform its economy. In China, people save too much. That means they spend less. The IMF says China must boost household spending. That would drive more economic activity. Finally, the message to Europe is blunt. The IMF wants the EU to act, not just talk. It says Europe needs a single market czar, someone to lead economic integration, remove trade barriers, unify labor laws, and create a single energy and finance system. Georgieva's message is clear. Enough lofty rhetoric. It's time for action. So what's the big picture? The global economy is not in crisis, but it's vulnerable. Markets are nervous, growth is slowing, and public frustration is rising. That's why the IMF is warning all governments, don't wait for a breakdown. Fix the structural gaps now because uncertainty is not going away. It is the new normal, and the world must be ready for it.
It is day 2 of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer's visit to India. Yesterday, he had quite the busy day. Starmer met with business leaders, he toured the Yashraj Film Studio, played some football, and even lit diyas and grooved to music. The optics were unmistakable. It was quite the early Diwali celebrations for the UK Prime Minister. But on day 2, it was down to business. Sharma began his day at the Raj Bhavan in Mumbai. He first met with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two leaders held wide-ranging talks. They spanned trade, defence, technology, education, and the global order.
My visit this week is about doubling down on the potential of our trade deal for the benefit of all of us. And that's why I brought a record 126 British businesses with me to India this week.
The meeting marked the first official visit to India by Sharma since taking office. So, of course, the stakes were high. Just 3 months ago, India and the UK had signed their long-delayed CETA. Now, that's the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. This is after 3 years of negotiations. Sharma called it a deal that benefits both countries.
We're creating a new, modern partnership focused on the future and on winning the opportunities that it offers, and we're doing it together. And that's why we struck the UK-India Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement in July, a breakthrough moment, years in the making, slashing tariffs, increasing access to each other's markets, to drive growth and create jobs for our people, and making life better in both of our nations.
दोनों देशों के इंपोर्ट कॉस्ट में कमी आएगी, युवाओं के लिए रोजगार के नए अवसर बनेंगे, व्यापार बढ़ेगा और इसका लाभ हमारे उद्योग तथा उपभोक्ता दोनों को ही मिलेगा.
Now, the focus of this visit is obviously trade. Trade and investment has grown by nearly $8 billion since the agreement was signed in July, so both countries are doubling down on that. For India, the India-UK trade deal would boost MSMEs. It will create jobs for young Indians, and it will strengthen the country's manufacturing backbone. Prime Minister Modi also set a bold target, doubling bilateral trade, currently at around $56 billion by the year 2030. But beyond trade, the partnership seemed to be deepening across multiple fronts.
The UK and India stand side by side as global leaders in tech and innovation, and so we've also taken the opportunity to deepen our cooperation through our Technology Security Initiative, with new commitments on AI, advanced communication, defence technologies, and much, much more. We're announcing a deal to make Bollywood films in the United Kingdom after a fantastic visit to the studio yesterday.
हमने क्रिटिकल मिनरल्स पर सहयोग के लिए एक इंडस्ट्री गिल्ड और सप्लाई चेन ऑब्जर्वेटरी की स्थापना का निर्णय लिया है. इसका सैटेलाइट कैंपस ISM धनबाद में होगा.
A major announcement came from the education sector. During Sharma's visit, 9 British universities received approval to open campuses in India. Now, this makes the UK the country with the largest higher education footprint in India. The move reflects India's growing appeal as a global education hub. Prime Minister Modi lauded the unique synergy between the two nations. Sharma, too, framed education as the heart of a new India-UK relationship, one built not just on trade, but on shared human capital. But if education was about the future, defence was about the present. During the visit, Britain signed a $468 million deal. This is to supply the Indian Army with lightweight multi-role missiles. The missiles are set to be built in Belfast. It is expected to directly create over 700 jobs in Northern Ireland. And the two nations will also collaborate on engines for naval ships. Sharma even went a step further. The UK Prime Minister publicly endorsed India's bid for a permanent seat at the UNSC, that's the United Nations Security Council.
When we leave India later on tonight, I expect that we will have secured major new investments, creating thousands of high-skilled jobs in the sectors of the future.
भारत और यूके नेचुरल पार्टनर्स हैं। हमारे संबंधों की नींव में डेमोक्रेसी, फ्रीडम और रूल ऑफ लॉ जैसे मूल्यों में साझा विश्वास है। मौजूदा वैश्विक अस्थिरता के दौर में भारत और यूके के बीच ये बढ़ती हुई साझेदारी ग्लोबल स्टेबिलिटी और आर्थिक प्रगति का एक महत्वपूर्ण आधार बनी रही है।
From there, it was the Global FinTech Fest. Another key stop on the itinerary. Prime Minister Modi talked about the country's digital transformation. Sharma too has talked at home about balancing innovation with safety. So this FinTech Fest provided a moment to align visions. Britain's financial expertise meeting India's digital scale.
We are so committed to this because we see India's potential. This country holds the promise of the future in its hands as the world's biggest democracy, one of the world's largest and fastest growing economies, with half of your population under 25 years old.
But while this visit was about trade and investments, there's one message both leaders repeated in different forms. India and the UK are natural partners, tied not just by history, but also democratic schedules. Sharma's two-day visit may read like a study of contrasts. From film studios to CEO summits, from football fields to fintech conferences, but it showcased the full spectrum of modern diplomacy. Part soft power, part hard deals, and a lot of symbolism. Britain may no longer rule the waves, but it's looking east again. This time, not as empire, but as an equal. This visit was an example of that. The next chapter of India-UK relations won't be written in the past. It will be written in the possibilities of the future. Pakistan is back to default. After hawking rare earths at the White House, Islamabad is turning to a tried and tested strategy, blaming India, because Pakistan's domestic situation is getting worse. There are protests in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. There are terror attacks in Balochistan. The economy is as bad as always. So, on cue, the country's defense minister turned to India. He says the risk of war with India is very real. Our next report tells you more.
When trouble comes, Pakistan has just one response: turn to India. And right now, Pakistan is facing a deluge of trouble. In Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, there is a political and security crisis. The province is ruled by Imran Khan's PTI party, but its chief minister has resigned after being asked to by the party chief. Why? Over repeated security failures. Just yesterday, the Pakistani Taliban attacked and killed 11 military personnel. It's part of a worrying trend in the province. So far, in 2025, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has seen 605 terrorist attacks. Overall, militancy and violence in Pakistan has surged by 46% this year, and Khyber is the worst hit region. By asking the chief minister to resign, Imran Khan is hoping to appear tough. A contrast when you look at the Pakistani army failures. They seem unable to protect their own, let alone civilians. Over in Sindh, it was almost a deja vu moment this week. Militants targeted the Jafar Express, which runs from Quetta to Peshawar. A bomb blast on the railway line derailed 4 bogies of the train. It left at least 7 passengers injured. The same train was targeted by Baloch separatists in March of 2025. They attacked and hijacked the train, holding at least 380 passengers hostage. While most were rescued, around 30 of them were killed. If you move to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the story is equally grim. Deadly protests rocked the region last week. Locals were demanding legislative reforms and cheaper food and electricity. The government responded with a brutal crackdown. It left around 12 protesters dead. All these security challenges have gripped Pakistan in the middle of an economic crisis. The World Bank has slashed the country's growth forecast. Before the monsoon season, it was expected to grow by 3.1%. But then came the rains. Pakistan's Punjab province faced its worst flooding in years. As a result, the agriculture sector, the backbone of Pakistan's economy, suffered. The World Bank is now expecting the country to grow by just 2.6%. Amid all these crises, you would expect their leadership to focus inward, but you'd be wrong. Pakistan's military and civilian leaders are warmongering. Listen to their defence minister, Khawaja Asif.
I do not want escalation, but the risks are real, and I'm not denying that. If it comes to war, we will achieve a better result than before.
Pakistan's military is also sabre-rattling. Earlier this week, Indian military officers had warned Pakistan against sponsoring terrorists. An innocent party would have denied the charge altogether. But not Pakistan. Their military warned India of a swift response against any action. In many ways, this sums up the problem with Pakistan. The country has 100 problems, but it keeps obsessing over the imagined threat from India.
Now let's talk about the US-China trade war. It is escalating. China has been stepping up the pressure. It is cutting down exports of a critical resource, rare earth metals. Now, rare earths are used everywhere these days, from semiconductors to smartphones, to EVs and even missile systems. China dominates the supplies of rare earths, and now they are cutting back. Today, China announced new export curbs. It says it wants to block military use of rare earths. But these rules will affect global supply chains, especially for high-tech companies in the United States. The timing is important. The move comes just days before new trade talks with President Trump. Look at what these new rules say. Now, China says that they will block the sharing of key technologies, and this includes anything which can help countries set up their own supply chain of rare earths. The nature of this crackdown is sweeping. Factories have been ordered to not transfer any manufacturing equipment abroad. Even technicians have been targeted. Many of them were asked to surrender their passports. They cannot travel abroad. So this is not just about raw materials. China is locking down the entire rare earth ecosystem. From mining to technology to expertise, nothing leaves the country. And here's why this matters. China dominates the global rare earth industry. It controls almost all stages of the supply chain. Now take dysprosium, which is a key metal used in high-temperature electronics. China refines 99% of the world's supply. There's just one major plant that does it, and that plant is in China. So the dependence is total. This makes other countries, especially the US, very vulnerable. American companies could be hit hard. Tech giants like Nvidia and Apple rely on rare earth imports. Under the new rules, they may need dual clearances, one from Washington and one from Beijing. China is doing what the US did earlier with semiconductors. It is using rare earths the same way America used chips, as leverage and as control over supply chains. Clearly, China's moves are aimed at the US. The Chinese have even reached out to India. Reports say that China made a direct request to New Delhi. It asked India not to divert any of its rare earth supply to the US. So China wants to block alternate routes. It wants to make sure no one else fills the gap. Earlier this year, Indian manufacturers faced a similar situation. They were unable to procure rare earth magnets from China. Now, this has pushed India to think about alternatives. Reports say that India is working on a new incentive scheme. The goal is to build rare earth magnet production at home. The government is planning to spend 7,300 crore on this program. These magnets are used in electronic motors and defense equipment. Right now, India imports nearly all of these magnets. But demand is rising fast. It is expected to double by 2030. India wants to produce 6,000 tons annually, and this would reduce imports and create local jobs. The scheme will also support startups in the sector. So what are we really looking at? A shift in global supply chains. Countries are moving to secure their own critical minerals, but these alternatives won't come about overnight. For now, China is one step ahead, and it is using rare earths as a strategic tool, like oil was used in the past, like semiconductors were used recently. Now magnets and rare earths are the new leverage, and China is showing the world that it knows how to use them. Flight delays are piling up again in the United States, but this time it isn't the weather or airline chaos, it's politics. As the government shutdown enters its second week, the impact is starting to show beyond Washington. Air traffic controllers are still reporting for duty, but they haven't been paid in days, and that's starting to slow operations at some of America's busiest airports. The Federal Aviation Administration, the nation's aviation regulator, has now been forced to delay flights for a third straight day. It says the system remains safe, but under growing strain. But the clock is ticking. As politicians continue to argue in Washington, the deadlock is now rippling through the runways. Here's our report.
Picture this. You're at the airport. The board flashes delayed. But this time, it's not the weather that has caused the delay. Neither is it a technical glitch. Rather, it's politics. America's air travel network has hit turbulence. It's not in the air, but on the ground. The Federal Aviation Administration, America's aviation regulator, has been forced to delay flights for a third straight day. And it's all because the government is shut down. By midweek, nearly 3,000 flights were delayed. That followed more than 10,000 earlier in the week. And the reason lies inside America's control towers. Inside those towers are the people who keep the skies safe. They guide every takeoff and landing. Every minute depends on them. But most of them work for the federal government. And right now, that government is shut down. When a shutdown begins, funding stops for most departments. But air traffic controllers are essential workers. They must still report to duty, even without pay. There are around 13,000 controllers across the United States, and another 50,000 airport security officers. All are working, but none are being paid. That's where the strain begins. Imagine guiding hundreds of planes a day and worrying about your rent. Many controllers are stressed. Some have started calling in sick. Others are working extra shifts just to fill the gaps. In a few regions, staffing has reportedly dropped by nearly half. That's forced the FAA to slow flight schedules across airports. It's a safety measure, but it means longer waits and growing delays.
In regard to controllers, yeah, there's controllers that have called out sick. So we're tracking it, and I don't have a continual problem in one area, right? There's been, one facility one day, another facility another day. Some areas there's been a 50% reduction in some of the staffing.
At the Hollywood Burbank Airport in California, the tower went dark for hours. Pilots handled landings themselves on a shared frequency. In Nashville, the approach center shut down and handed airspace to Memphis. Major hubs like Chicago, Dallas, and Newark also face staff shortages. The FAA says safety is not at risk, but the system is under pressure. Even before the shutdown, America was short by about 3,500 controllers. Now, the gaps are widening. To keep rural routes alive, the Department of Transportation released $41 million from emergency funds that will sustain regional flights until November. But it's a short-term fix, not a long-term plan. Airports and unions are stepping in to support unpaid staff. Some offer free meals and parking, others are working with local food banks. Many workers say they're showing up out of duty, even without pay. For now, America's skies remain safe. Data reportedly shows that many of the flights still remain on time, but the delays are steadily increasing. Besides, the holiday travel is on the horizon. The longer Washington stays shut, the slower the nation's airspace would become. The question is, how long can they stay that way?
And moving on to India, in early September, at least 19 children died in Madhya Pradesh. They were aged from 1 to 6 years old. The children's deaths were first linked to kidney failure. Initial investigations tested local water. They looked at other possible causes. But a state laboratory in Chennai later confirmed the real source: diethylene glycol, or DEG, contamination. That too in cough syrup. So these children died after consuming a locally manufactured cough syrup. Now, the tested samples contained 48.6% DEG. This is a toxic industrial solvent used in brake fluid and antifreeze. Ingesting DEG can lead to acute kidney failure, sometimes even neurological complications and death. Soon after, similar reports emerged from Rajasthan. 2 young children had allegedly died after consuming another locally made cough syrup. This one contained dextromethorphan, another drug that is unsafe for very young children. Following the deaths, Indian regulators tested multiple cough syrup brands. On the 2nd of October, authorities confirmed this. Cough syrups from 3 brands were contaminated with DEG. This was found in quantities of up to 500 times the legal limit. The Drugs Controller General of India ordered state and central inspections, and this is across 19 manufacturing units in 6 states. Factories were found to have serious regulatory violations, and this is including the failure to test every batch of raw material, or even the finished product as required. One facility was shut down, and police have also opened an investigation into one company. They have been accused of manslaughter. The Health Ministry has banned the sale of these 3 cough syrups. It has seized all available stock, and the ministry has also urged doctors to ensure rational use of cough syrups in children. Meanwhile, officials said the government is increasing inspections at pharmaceutical facilities nationwide. They are reviewing compliance with quality control standards. However, the central regulator has acknowledged lapses. It says that some companies were still not testing all batches of raw materials. Now, this is despite multiple previous warnings. And even the WHO has reacted to this. That's the World Health Organization. The WHO expressed deep concern over the incidents. It pointed to what it called a regulatory gap in DEG screening. India now requires mandatory testing for all exported syrups. But the WHO says there is no equivalent rule for domestic production. The WHO officials confirmed receiving India's report identifying the 3 toxic syrups. it is yet to issue a global medical product alert. This is not the first time that India has faced such a tragedy. In 2023, contaminated Indian-made syrups were linked to 70 child deaths in Gambia and 18 in Uzbekistan. From 2019 to 2020, at least 12 children died in Jammu after consuming locally produced cough syrups. Similar DEG poisonings were reported in several Indian states dating back to the 1970s. Each incident followed a similar pattern: small manufacturers, poor quality testing, and delayed regulatory response. India is the world's third largest producer of medicines by volume. It is the largest supplier of generic drugs globally. The industry is worth over $50 billion. More than half of its value is coming from exports. India supplies about 40% of generic medicines used in the United States. Over 90% of medicines go to many African countries. The cough syrup market alone is projected to grow at 9.9% a year. However, the market is highly fragmented. Thousands of small and medium-sized manufacturers operate with limited oversight. Each such case erodes trust in India's pharmaceutical industry. So the need of the hour is quality control. India must strengthen its drug regulation system to ensure that every medicine made and sold is tested, safe, and truly fit for use. Imagine this. You step out expecting a bright sunny day, and instead, the sky feels muted. The light is filtered. The sky is almost grey, even when it's not raining. Now that is becoming the norm across India. Over the last 3 decades, the country has been losing hours of sunlight every year. The loss may not be dramatic at first glance, but the impact is big. India depends on the sun for everything from crops to solar power. So losing sunlight hours isn't great news. And what's leading to this? Our next report tells you more.
For India, the sun is more than a star in the sky. It is the heartbeat of life. The invisible engine that drives agriculture, fuels solar energy ambitions, and shapes culture and daily routines. From the golden fields in Punjab to the rice paddies of the east, sunlight dictates planting, growth, and harvest. Historically, Indian calendars and festivals revolved around solar cycles. The country celebrates the sun as both a celestial body and a source of life. Yet over the past 3 decades, that power has been quietly waning. India is losing hours of sunshine each year. This is because of a phenomenon scientists call solar dimming. It's caused by clouds, pollution, and tiny aerosol particles hanging in the air. The North Indian plains have been hit hardest, losing roughly 13.1 hours of sunlight per year. Cities and industrial zones there pump out aerosols. That is tiny particles from vehicles, factories, and biomass burning. These particles act like a filter, dimming sunlight before it even reaches the ground. For farmers, less sun means crops grow slower, yields can drop, and water stress rises. Even small changes in sunlight can ripple through the agricultural calendar. Along India's west coast, sunshine drops about 8.6 hours per year, especially during the monsoon. Persistent clouds linger even on dry days, so solar panels capture less power. Every lost hour of sunlight reduces electricity generation, slowing progress towards green energy goals. The Himalayan foothills, which once boasted crisp skies, are losing about 9.5 hours of sunlight each year. Less sunlight means changes in snowmelt patterns, and while the mountains seem far away from daily life, the shift has a direct impact on agriculture and drinking water. In the Deccan Plateau, the situation is slightly better. It sees about 3 hours of sunlight lost per year, a smaller drop, but consistent over decades. Dust, industrial haze, and seasonal cloud cover combine to keep skies overcast for longer. The northeastern region also shows only a mild decline of 1.5 hours per year, giving it a slight reprieve. But even here, haze and cloud cover fluctuates. Why is this so important? India's solar ambitions are vast. The country wants to become a global leader in renewable energy. But less sunlight means solar panels are less effective, especially in higher demand regions like the North Plains and West Coast. Every lost hour of sunshine is a lost kilowatt hour of power. Sunlight also drives crop growth. Less sunshine can slow growth cycles, reduce yields and increase water stress, particularly for rain-fed crops. For farmers, the subtle dimming of the sun can translate into financial stress. Reduced sunlight also complicates climate prediction. But it is not all bad news. Solutions do exist. Reducing aerosol emissions from transport, industry and biomass burning can help restore sunlight. Cleaner energy, improved urban planning and stricter air quality regulations are all part of the toolkit. But the challenge is enormous. The sun may rise every morning, but how much of its light reaches the ground depends increasingly on the choices India makes today.
You all must have heard of media interviews, the ones world leaders give at summits and press rooms. But have you ever heard of an underwater interview with a president? Well, Palau's leader just did that. Not for fun, but to raise awareness. For his island nation, the ocean is life, and it's quickly turning into a threat. Palau is a tiny country in the Pacific. It is located east of the Philippines, and it is home to just around 18,000 people. It is surrounded by water that is slowly rising. So when its president gave an interview underwater, it wasn't a stunt, it was a statement. A call from the deep, warning the world above. Our final report has more.
It's not every day a world leader decides to make a splash, but this one did, quite literally. A president in scuba gear, a mermaid by his side, and a giant clam watching quietly. No, this is no fantasy film, it's the Pacific island nation of Palau, and its president just made history. He held the world's first live underwater interview. Surangal Whips Jr., the president of Palau, went beneath the waves to speak to the world. His interviewer, Estonian Olympic swimmer and ocean activist Merle Levand. Levand is known for her mermaid swims. The two sat on the ocean floor, wearing full-face diving masks. They spoke through a new invention called the Li-Fi talking mask. It's a system that uses beams of light to send sound underwater. The audio crackled, yet it worked. And for a few surreal minutes, the president's voice echoed beneath the sea. A strange sight, yes, but not without purpose. Because this moment didn't happen off the coast of some superpower. It happened in one of the smallest, most vulnerable nations on Earth, a place built entirely around the ocean. Palau is a small archipelago of about 340 islands in the western Pacific Ocean. It is located east of the Philippines and is home to just around 18,000 people. Palau's waters are its wealth. It's home to coral gardens, rare species, and one of the world's first shark sanctuaries. The sea here isn't just scenery. It's their identity, economy, and survival. But that survival is under threat. Sea levels are rising, eating away Palau's coasts. Coral reefs are bleaching white under warmer seas. Salt water is seeping into crops and groundwater, and tropical storms are becoming more intense. The government has warned that some low-lying atolls could disappear within decades. For some of us, climate change might just be an argument, but for Palau it's already a reality. So when the president chose to speak underwater, it wasn't a gimmick. It was a message, a way to show what's already happening beneath the surface. Palau's act now joins a powerful tradition of ocean diplomacy. In 2009, the then Maldives President Mohamed Nasheed held an underwater cabinet meeting. Ministers signed climate papers beneath the sea. In 2019, the then Seychelles President Danny Faure broadcast a speech from a submersible 124 meters down. He called the ocean the beating blue heart of our planet. And in 2021, the then Tuvalu's Foreign Minister Simon Kof addressed the United Nations Climate Summit while standing knee-deep in seawater. It became a haunting image of a nation being swallowed by the tide. So different islands, but the same warning. The sea is rising and time is running out. After his dive, President Whipps said Palau has always believed in the sustainable use of the ocean. It's in our DNA. And for a country that's surrounded by ocean, that's not a slogan, that's survival. So yes, a president spoke beneath the sea, but the real message was meant for those still on land. Because when a leader has to speak from the ocean floor to be heard, it says less about him and more about us. From the depths of the Pacific, Palau's message rises clear. The ocean is speaking, and this time the world should listen.
And now it's time for Vantage shots, images that tell the story. Russian attack damages port and energy infrastructure in Ukraine's Odessa region. A bear attacks a woman out for a morning walk in Japan. And the world's driest desert blooms into a rare fleeting flower show. And finally, taking you back in history, on this day in 2004, the first presidential elections were held in Afghanistan. Nearly 8 million Afghans, including women, voted for the first time. Hamid Karzai was elected as president. Since the Taliban took over in 2021, there have been no elections in the country. Leaving you on that note, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow.
Want the facts?
The latest developments?
News that gets straight to the point.
Well, we've got all three just for you. This is Firstpost Live, a brand new show, your window into what really matters.
Don't miss it.